Well, I came to this game like a lot of others do. I've been an entrepreneur and startup founder myself. And we all work hard and we all think we have the best thing on the planet, but sometimes timing and luck needs to be right. We've had that with our last one, which we sold after a very short and fast ride to BlackBerry, of all people, because it was a mobile social gaming platform. I then was for just over 2 years, I was BlackBerry's global head of games. This was before, well, this was at the time when they still had hope that BlackBerry 10 would fly. When it became clear that that wouldn't be the case, I left pretty quickly and have been angel investing ever since. I also still have a company of my own, together with one co-founder, self-funded, no external finance, 50 odd people, a very different experience than fast growth venture backed, but quite satisfying nonetheless.
So how do you invest early stage startups? I mean, you have already a kind of entrepreneurship background, but do you also do investments, and how do you do that?
Yes, basically, I'm a reasonably small angel, which is why my Twitter profile, for instance, says I'm an angel with small wings. In other words, I'm not one of those super angels that invest 100, 200 grand per startup. I'm unfortunately not that rich. So I started off, I'm a venture partner in Emerge Education, which is certainly Europe's largest education tech-focused accelerator program based out of London. In that I tend to invest alongside the program, and then during the course of the program we'll work with the startups I invest in on at least weeklies. Now that was, I think it's helpful to startups because distinct to a mentor, who comes in once and basically tells you about her experiences and then they ride off into the sunset again and they're gone. I'm basically out the program and can check in on them and can work with them. At the same time, it also did help me specifically at the start when I started investing. My thinking was that as an entrepreneur, I've made many mistakes, and I have also seen what success looks like. All those years of experience should, in theory, allow me to have a better look at what might or might not succeed, but equally I should be perhaps in a better position than people with different backgrounds to actually also help the startups I'm working with by sharing my experience.
I mean, you mentioned about failure. What was your experience about failures? Should you share with some of them with us?
I was reasonably lucky, but there were a few things. We did a buyout of one of our companies, and we were four founders. Two of us thought the iPhone would be the big thing. The other two weren't so sure, but I had, when we started doing that buyout, I hadn't really looked at roles and titles, etc. I thought, well, whatever, so we're all co-founders and things will work out. They didn't work out so well. And the result was that the two of us left. Now the happy ending is that we then went on to found the company, which we now still have and has. It did work out. But Had I been slightly smarter about this, I probably should have seen these things earlier and made sure that the framework was in place and that we did not only just so happen to meet each other in one company, but that we actually wanted to do this together as people.
I understand your point of view. And also to go back to the previous questions, how do you get the flow of your early stage investments? How do you find them? And what is your kind of process to invest in these early stage startups?
Well, so many angels are hiding, and they're very, very difficult to find. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm quite easy to find. I'm out there. I speak a lot at conferences. I do get quite a bit of deal flow through Emerge Education on the education tech side, but equally, I'm out in the ecosystem. I speak with people, and what then happens is that that word very quickly gets out. Oh, look, there's someone who actually invests in this. I have a startup. I want to do this. Maybe I should speak to him. So a lot of the deal flow is actually inbound. I have, however, and that's I think distinct to some at least types of angel investors. I have a couple of fairly well-defined areas that I'm interested in, that I invest in. One was education tech. The other is anything around artificial intelligence. I very often still get pitched from things around the game area, simply because I've spent so much time in that space. People know me from those verticals. So they will reach out.
So what do you expect from the startups after you invest, or how do you help them?
That's two very different things. Expectations this early in the stage. As an angel investor, you're typically the first external money after friends and family. As we all know, this journey goes on for quite a bit longer usually, and things are always different than you think they are. In other words, along your journey, things will always change. So at the very, very start, the things that are important, I find genuinely intelligent people are a lot more fun to work with. I think it's important that people are open and willing to learn, and willing to listen. That doesn't mean that whatever I say is right, but I think it's a mindset generally. If you are someone who is willing to listen, you are in a much better position, or you have much better chances to actually learn. And equally also over time to then make a much better judgment call to when someone is giving you bad advice. So I think that's a very important part. And then amongst founding teams, I look a lot at the chemistry around the team. How do they work? Because if along the line something changes, and changes in the way you roll out your startup and the way you build it occur, or you realize that the business model that you thought was the winning one actually isn't the winning one. Maybe your product isn't just right. Maybe people don't want to buy green hats; they want to buy blue hats, and you don't have any blue hats. So whenever these things happen, if you have a team that is bright and intelligent and listens and learns, you have a much bigger chance for them actually to go on and be able to adapt to those changes and succeed.
Most of the US and also San Francisco-based investors are looking for only startups in areas. Do you also?
Sorry, the audio cut out for a second.
Yes. Okay. I mean, most of the Silicon Valley investors are looking for startups in their location, not other countries? Do you also invest only, for example, UK companies, or are you for other countries opportunities to invest as well?
I mean, the reason why people tend to invest close to home is simply it allows you to interact more easily and to do things over video, Skype, whatever it might be, is possible, but it is not as powerful as being in the same room. That is, I think, one of the main reasons why people tend to stay at home. Now, having said that, I'm on the board. I'm on the board of a company in Seattle, and I've been working with companies in San Francisco. I've been working with companies in Germany and Scandinavia, Barcelona, but I mainly do look at closer to home for the same reasons. It is particularly very, very early on. I find it easier to interact with people if they're not too far away from me. But you know, if the best thing ever happens to be in Arusha, Tanzania, then you know, why not?
So I understand your point of view, and I mean the question I also asked you about failure just a second ago. What are the common mistakes you have met? I mean, from your also entrepreneurship background and also the startups that you have invested, common 3 mistakes that you have already experienced in these early stages?
I mean, one is, and this is very closely linked to investment in startups. A lot of startups don't really make up their mind what type of business they are before they start. If you want to go onto the venture path, you know, raise outside funding first from an angel, then eventually if you do a seed round, you do A round, etc. You basically you're looking to an asset class of capital funding that is very, very specific. And if you want to do a venture-backed startups, you need to have a business model, or you need to have a product or service that is capable of delivering outside returns. And an outside return is not 2 million after 5 years. You know, 2 million pounds, dollars, whatever. That's a lot of money to me, to most people. But if you turn over or even or profit to the tune of 2 million after 5 years, that is not an outside return for a venture capitalist. And if that is so, that doesn't mean that your business idea is bad, and it doesn't mean that that the business itself is bad. It can be a great business, but it might mean that you're speaking to the wrong investors, because this is arguably then not a company that is venture investable. And because people don't usually think about these things before, they end up wasting a lot of time speaking to effectively the wrong people, and then they're very, very frustrated. They say, "Oh, and none of these people wants to invest in me," etc. When in truth, it is because they actually speak to the wrong people. This is something I wish I had known earlier, because like probably most other founders, I wasted time with by speaking to the wrong people. Today, so what I suggest every founder does is learn about the business model of a venture capital fund, because it also teaches you a lot on what do you have to have in attributes within your startups, and in order to speak to these people, what is the right stage, what is the right vertical, etc., etc., etc. So one of my favorites is a book called Venture Deals by Brett Felt, which is, it's an easy read. You don't need a business school degree or anything to understand this. But what it does do is it basically it will help you avoid some of those mistakes. So that is very, very, very common. Another reasonably common one is people just saying, well, we know this is usually how people do it, but we are different. If you try to, and this is true for solo founders, is it possible to run a successful startup as a solo founder? It absolutely is, but it is also exponentially harder to pull it off. Therefore, it is much, much harder to raise funding. So, for you to say, I don't care, this is what I want to do, that is fine. But at the same time, what you're trying then to do is you effectively try to change the narrative of what people in the market usually do. And the question is that a battle you really have to fight? The same is true for, I don't know, the way a pitch deck looks. There is a reason why this famous Sequoia pitch deck, for instance, is still very often used as a sort of blueprint, because if you structure it that way, you actually usually manage to provide a pretty decent overview. And those decks are always only ever a start. But to then say, oh, I don't do a pitch deck, I will only do a live presentation, again, is that a battle that you have to fight? So, I'm all for trying to be different, trying new things, etc., but choose your battles wisely.
Thank you. I mean, this is a long answer, but I mean, probably very valuable for the all entrepreneurs. So the last question is, do you agree with the fail fast and success faster?
That very much depends on what it is you're doing. The whole idea of failing fast is that if you every startup runs on certain assumptions, and the sooner you prove or disprove those assumptions, the better, because the faster you are, the less money you burn. So in other words, if your assumption is that people will like green hats, and then you go out tomorrow and ask people if they would like a green hat, and no one says yes, then yes, it is better to fail fast, because don't order green hats, order blue hats. Testing your assumptions as soon as you can is important. And in that respect, yes, failing fast is better than failing slowly. What you have to bear in mind, however, is test the right assumptions. There's a lot of bias in those things. So if you basically, if you were to go out, we're seeing this sometimes out of the valley with certain things. If you go out in the valley and you say, hey, how would you like to not having to waste time eating? And then all the nerdy engineers in the valley, they said, oh, this is the best idea ever. If you would go out and ask people in, I don't know, central Rome during lunchtime, they would look at you and think you're crazy. So it depends on what are actually the test groups that you use for this. And it's important to kind of like be aware of your own biases when you're doing this. But the principle on trying to test your assumptions as soon as you can, that is certainly true.
Volker, thank you very much for your valuable answers. These are very useful in my point of view to all startups. And thank you having this interview, your valuable time, and hope to see you in Istanbul.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And have fun out there. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.